Strange World, Disney's latest animated Thanksgiving release about a group of explorers discovering, obviously, a strange new world, was such a huge flop that as of recording this, it holds the record for Disney's lowest domestic gross ever. Marketing was part of what caused this, but the bigger question is, why was it so poorly marketed to begin with? Many people immediately point fingers towards Bob Chapek, thinking that he's trying to phase out animation, but I mean, Encanto, Turning Red, and Lightyear didn't have marketing this bad. I know those were all flops, minus Turning Red maybe for its fan response. But the marketing was more so out there for those movies than it was for Strange World. They had more trailers, more posters, and more attention, just running into conflicts with COVID keeping audiences out of theaters, and ideas that weren't enticing enough to warrant a theater run. No, the reason why the film ended up flopping is actually something that's been an issue with their sci-fi films since at least 1982 with the now cult classic Tron. Before that, sci-fi as a genre wasn't too hard for Disney to tackle, with classics like The Absent-Minded Professor, The Cat from Outer Space, and a personal favorite of mine, Escape to Witch Mountain. But from Tron on, Disney would have flop after flop in the sci-fi genre, from The Rocketeer, to Flubber, to Treasure Planet, to Atlantis, to Tron Legacy, to John Carter, to Tomorrowland, to now Strange World. Only Disney could afford to have 8 flops on their balance sheet. The funny thing is, though, these films aren't necessarily bad, at least not all of them, and especially not any worse than the other sci-fi films Disney was making prior. If anything, a good chunk of them were acclaimed by both critics and audiences, but I did a series of polls recently on my community tab on why all these films bombed, and most of you agreed that the marketing was the most common problem with those as well. However, if you look back at the impressive marketing for Tron Legacy and remember that that film was also considered a financial disappointment, maybe marketing doesn't come off as the core issue for those either. In fact, for those of you who narrow it down to the marketing, I ask you, how would you market these films as they are to today's audiences? Somehow Disney has lost their grip on the sci-fi genre, but how did they lose that grip? Why haven't they been able to get that grip back? And for that matter, is it possible for them to get it back? The answer is simpler than you think. Back in the day, the pulpy retro sci-fi style was extremely popular and very easy for Disney to keep up with, but in the late 70s, 2 sci-fi films in particular changed the trajectory of the genre in a way that everyone was having a hard time banking on, let alone Disney. The first film is a little film you may have heard about called Star Wars, which not only gave the genre an adult edge, but an adult edge that both adults and kids could connect with. As most of you know, everyone was having a hard time keeping up with the impact that Star Wars was having, and of course, Disney would be so aware of this that it gave that problem a quick fix. The second, and probably most important in this discussion, was Ridley Scott's Alien, which, while it may not have been the first sci-fi horror film, was the box office smash that cemented the idea of sci-fi having this adult edge. This wasn't too hard for most studios to cash in on, but it puts the family brand like Disney in an especially difficult place.
We are clearly in uncharted territory.
Since then, there have been 2 things in particular that Disney has tried again and again without any success. The first is, of course, having that adult edge, with films like Atlantis the Lost Empire, Treasure Planet, and John Carter, all films that tried to cater to adult audiences and failed significantly. The problem with these films is that while they are darker and less princess rescuing a princess-ish than most Disney films, they still had the restraints of the Disney brand itself. The brand has been known for tender sweetness, something that no one would ever expect from a dark action movie. So when Disney attempts to do a dark action movie, it pushes the envelope, but not in a way that can compete with Alien, Inception, or even Avatar. The brutal violence of those films will always be beyond Disney's grasp, no matter how much they dull the film's color palette. The second thing they would try to do, which is where Strange World fits in along with many, many others, can be demonstrated with the other cult classic, The Rocketeer. This film is less like the sci-fi films of its generation, and significantly less like those of this generation, but instead tries to recapture the retro sci-fi style that was popular during the era where Disney's sci-fi films reigned, and the marketing did not hide that for a second. Whether it was the posters, the trailer, or even the title card's font, this film was shamelessly old-fashioned. Not only does this not work with audiences for obvious reasons, but they don't really add anything to give them a reason to come and check it out. The only recent film that I can think of that had a similar style that was a hit was Captain America: The First Avenger, but that film succeeded because of the promise of what was yet to come. Once that was out of the way, they had to change the franchise up to something modern audiences could connect with. This is something that strangely Disney is refusing to do with their own films despite it resulting in bomb after bomb. And the reason Strange World's marketing campaign was minimal could be because their marketing team is either embarrassed they're still trying to market a film like this, or confused on how they could market a film like this at all. Hell, this was made even more apparent with Tomorrowland, where they attempted to disguise the retro style with a mystery box campaign, but the problem is that because the film was surrounded with this style, it ended up disguising the whole movie, leaving viewers with no idea of what the film was about, and therefore no interest in seeing it. Somehow I get the feeling that Disney's marketing team is aware that films of this style aren't going to sell, so they're instead opting to hide the style or even the entire film from modern audiences, which could be the most likely reason why the marketing for Strange World was so minimal. So hopefully by this point you've caught on to what I'm trying to say here. The reason Strange World, along with many other Disney films in this genre, was so hard to market and as a result flopped at the box office is because the genre took a turn that ended up making the genre more for adults than for families, and Disney, being a family brand, is having a hard time keeping up with that. But there's one massive film that people forget is a sci-fi film that could help Disney crack the code on making family-friendly sci-fi. A little classic known as E.T. Now, I know Disney has taken a stab at the E.T. story with Lilo and Stitch, which is another one that even I forgot was technically a sci-fi film, but much like the other films that tried to blatantly copy E.T. after its success, that's missing the point on why it was a huge hit. E.T. was a hit because it took a new angle on the idea of something sci-fi-ish like extraterrestrial beings by tapping into the emotions of the experience from the perspective of a child rather than action or adult discovery. This is the angle that Disney needs to take in order to create better sci-fi films, because their brand has too many restraints to effectively tackle the adult sides of the genre without losing the charm of said brand. But if E.T. has proven anything, it's that children can connect with the genre if given the opportunity. Science is about discovery through not only experimentation but also observation, and children are much more observant than adults realize. Half the time, that's all they do is observe and ask questions. So, my recommendation is ditch that rusty retro style, quit trying to make darker films for adults, and start tapping into the childlike emotions to discover something spectacular. Or at least more so than a triangle of daddy issues. But what are your thoughts on this? Do you think there's another reason why Strange World and other Disney sci-fi films have been flopping? And what do you think about taking a more childlike emotional approach to the genre? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button as well as that subscribe button, as we'll be cracking even more cases like this and can truly use your support. I'm CM Waters, and I'll see you next time.